All right, Peter, we'll give it another minute or two and then we can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Did the schedule for the meeting come up on your end?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
All right. Peter, let's go ahead and just get started. So I figure most on a Sunday are going to be probably watching this after anyways, and we've got a lot of stuff to get through.
Right.
So, all right. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. This is Coach Jess. Wanted to just do a little mid-season, mid-recruiting season check-in with everyone just to kind of just talk through some of the things I think that Peter and I have just kind of consistently been hearing, just some of the questions that have been popping up. And hopefully we can help you guys, maybe tackle some things that you might be going through. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for anyone who may not know who you are?
Yeah, so I am one of the five of us recruiting coordinators, and I am located in Iowa. So I've been with my recruiting assistant for almost 3 years now. Yeah, kind of came from a coaching background and now do the recruiting full time.
You're the veteran of the MRA group.
Some might say. Some may not, though. Who knows?
All right. So the first topic we wanted to kind of dive into is just talking through what to do if your recruiting has stalled. This is specifically going to be more geared towards the 22s and the 23s. We've kind of seen as we, if an athlete comes to us and they're like, hey, I feel like my recruiting's not going anywhere. This is kind of usually the checklist that we will walk through with the athletes, and usually, some sort of issue kind of falls into this that, will help get things going. So the first thing, which is kind of more of like a technical issue, but we just want to make sure that your university athlete, Peter was just telling me the other day that one of the athletes that he works with, their university athlete was accidentally updated to committed. So she wasn't getting a lot of tractions because when coaches were coming to our court, they pull her up on UA and they're like, oh, this kid's committed. So, just making sure that your information is current in there, and that includes your contact information, your club information, and that also includes, stuff like height. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the year, but I have one athlete who, when she first started playing volleyball around her freshman year, was about 5'10", and I think that's what was in her UA. And she's now 6'2", rounding the bases to 6'3". So that's also super important, because if a, coach needs a middle and they like having, tall middles, they're probably going to do a search for the height. So that, is something that can just kind of help you out. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about is just your target list. Your target list being too small or too narrow. So Peter, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, just like it's never good to put all your eggs in one basket with a single school or a handful of schools, the kind of, our philosophy here is that you should be treating just recruiting in general as the same. And so if you're someone who's looking at Division I, you should definitely be looking at some Division II schools as well and kind of casting a wider net. There's nothing that says that you have to end up going to a Division II school, even if you get far along in the process with a coach. It's about creating options for yourself. It's about learning more about what programs have to offer, what coaching philosophies and the culture of teams fit you and your style. And you'll just be so surprised sometimes with the places you fall in love with and the places that you have such high expectations for that don't meet the mark for you. And sometimes that may mean another division. Just like if you're looking at Division II, you should very seriously be looking at, some of the stronger NAIA programs. I think Jess, you'd agree with me here that there's kind of like a false sense of pecking order where everyone thinks like, okay, here's the worst Division 1 team, but the best Division 2 team must be just under them, and then the Division 3 teams or something like that's not how it works. Different schools from different playing levels would beat each other if they were to play. And so again, just try to have that open mind, and again, just push any preconceived sort of notions you have about places and programs and competitiveness aside until you truly learn about them. Because you just there's so many hidden gems out there that if you just give the time to, you may just fall in love with.
Usually when I'm asking athletes, about this question on their target list, I would say usually the answer that I kind of get is like, oh, like I've emailed, five, to 10 schools, and they're usually like the bigger, more well-named universities in their area. So and most of the time those programs, they may even be done. So what I like to go back to is, let's go back to what's important to us. I think building your target list off of location, I think that's a big one. And I think specifically off your major, that is also another big one that you want to focus on. Now, sometimes you may need to expand on your location a little bit. What Peter talked about, considering other divisions, really being open to that. I think Peter and I can both, just really speak on, many of the athletes that we work with, they kind of start off their recruiting with this, and they have this idea in their head. And, if they can get themselves to a point where they are open, I think, they end up surprising themselves what they end up really wanting in the end. Sometimes you don't really know what you don't know until you start learning about what the opportunities are out there. So really starting to, expand on that target list and, putting more feelers out. I think that's something that, can be very beneficial to an athlete. The more narrow your options are, the more limiting your options are. And many of those programs may already be done with their recruiting, for that class or your position. Maybe they're not looking for that position in your class. So the more open you can be, typically the more success you're going to have in the recruiting process.
I think one more thing that we can add in there too, and is I think the question that I always get every time I start with an athlete, we go over the target list concept, is like, oh, how many schools should I have on there? And just to give you an example, let's say you're 2023 right now. You started the process late. You really want to play Division 1 volleyball. That's your goal, and you come up with 60 schools on your list, and that may feel really large. But what happens if 30 of them just don't even need your position in that class? Another 15 have already committed someone. Another 7 of them are so high level that what you're touching above the net is just too low. Now 60 schools has become what, like 5 to 8 or something. And so things can dwindle so fast. And you have to remember there's, hundreds and hundreds of schools out there. So even 50 to 60 schools in the grand scheme of things could really be pretty small.
I think that's great. This is going to lead us into kind of like our next topic, which is limiting options or taking options off too soon. So I think this kind of piggybacks a little bit on what Peter was talking about being open. But a lot of times what I see is I see an athlete that's like, oh, well, I don't want to go to school in that state, or, I don't want to consider that division. And the problem sometimes is when you take options off, and these may be schools that may be offering you, these may be schools that maybe have a full ride to offer you, or they can put together a pretty good package. And when you don't allow some of these offers and these opportunities to come to your door, it doesn't really create a sense of urgency to maybe the schools that you want to get offers from. It doesn't push them to extend an offer, because that's one of the questions that I think we get early on, as recruiting coordinators, or that you may get, if you're talking to a school that you're very highly interested in, is, well, who else is recruiting you? Do you have any offers on the table? So I think allowing that sometimes, and I think sometimes kids will feel a little bit bad of, well, I don't really want to go to that school. I feel bad. Well, coaches are used to saying no, and it's their job to sell you on a program. So hear them out, hear out the program. And if someone's, excited enough about you to extend an offer or to offer you a visit and get you on campus, take advantage of that. I would say you never know where people are going to end up, and you never know if this might actually be a school that you're interested in. So, a couple of weeks ago with one of the athletes I was working with, she was communicating with the school and just really was about to take it off the list and was about to communicate or about to commit to another school. Hadn't visit, was just kind of feeling the pressure. And then, I kind of told her, I said, let's just sit back. These coaches are going to be here. They're going to, come watch you this weekend at the next tournament. So just kind of wait. Ended up going on a visit, and her decision making totally flip flopped after that. So, don't rush to commit. Don't rush to, take schools off, hear people out. Peter, do you have anything that you kind of want to follow up on that too?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think like in our conversations with college coaches, I think one of the most common things we talk about, if it's not some brand name school you see on TV all the time, is just, 90% of the battle is just getting the kid to get on the phone, and then getting them to come to campus. And then when you do that, anyone can, all you have to do is then show you the wonders of where they're at, and tell you all about why they love being there, and let you experience that, and spend time with the team and on campus, and really getting to feel sort of integrated into it all. And again, until you do those things, you won't find out all the things that are really going to matter most in the end to you, in this process. And so sometimes, even if you go to a school and it's just awful, and I don't mean awful, awful is a weird word. Let's just say you don't feel it right in your heart and your gut, it just doesn't feel right. You should be able to say, well, these are the things, X, Y, and Z that I, didn't feel right about. Well, okay, well, you may have taken a visit and it's not where you ended up, but at least you just learned a few more things about what you don't want, or it's confirmed some things for you. So don't look at that as such a negative experience. If you get to that point in the process and it just doesn't feel right.
I think that's great
Due
info,
diligence.
Peter. I would say one of the next things that we're going to touch on is probably one of, I would say, a big misconception in recruiting. It's the, well, if I'm good enough, people are going to find me type mentality. And I feel like that is probably the case for a very small percentage of athletes who play volleyball. Putting yourself in the position of a college coach. And I like to use the university that I coach at. So we are a high academic HBCU. We are super small. We're under 1,000 students, and we're located right in the, downtown area of Nashville, Tennessee. So when I go into a gym and I'm recruiting, I have to find students, one, that are, interested in going to a minority-based school. I don't know that when which kids in a gym might be interested in that. I also have academic requirements, that kids must meet in order for me to really even consider them. Again, if I just walk into a gym, I don't know those kids that, meet that. We are small. That small is not the best fit for everybody. Some kids don't want that small school experience. So again, when I walk into a gym, I have no idea which kids want, a smaller school. We are in a downtown, metropolitan city. While Nashville may be a little bit smaller, it is growing, and not everyone is comfortable or is looking for that setting. So, the first kids that we as college coaches go after are the kids that reach out to us, and not necessarily those who just send those feeler emails out. Because I can tell you, my email is like flooded with those that are like, hey, I'm basically like, I'm just trying to see if you're interested, or, they kind of throw out this email and then I never hear from the kid again. Or I would say, to be honest with you, a lot of times, like those emails, even if I, do have some extra time in my schedule and I look through that and I go and I respond back to the kid, like usually I never hear back from them. So, coaches often spend the time on kids who, email them, contact them directly, and who have shown that they've done some research in the school. Those are going to be the kids that we're going to go after. Frankly, because I know that they want to be there. I know that they want to go, to my university. So, I think it's important to go out there and do research. You have got to actually put work and effort into recruiting and getting yourself out there. And it's got to be consistent. So, Peter, you've got any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think Fisk is a really good example of, I think a really common reason for a lot of kids sometimes in not putting a school on their target list is too small. And so, yes, Fisk is 1,000 or under 1,000 students. Campus may be smaller. It really may, yes. But there's a huge difference if Fisk is totally off the beaten path, an hour and a half from a city, versus being right in Nashville, because culturally, socially, like life is just not going to feel small and claustrophobic. And so, like, if you're hesitant about adding smaller schools to your list, find smaller schools that are in metropolitan areas or large urban areas. And it, again, your campus may feel small, but I mean, just to I answer this for me, but it's just my perception and just from everything, in my experience is that, you've got Fisk there, and then there's going to be how many other colleges within 15 miles, right?
Oh gosh,
Do those kids, like a lot of
we've
those
got a
kids
lot.
end up getting to know each other, and, it all just becomes a bigger world. So yeah,
And I'll touch on this too, Peter. Like some of these smaller institutions have joint academic programs. So just again, using us as an example, we have dual programs with Vanderbilt, we have dual programs with Belmont, and there's other programs. I mean, you can take a look in a lot of these metropolitan cities and see some of these smaller schools, that maybe offer some additional programs. And usually you're still paying that smaller school tuition compared to like the bigger school. So it usually kind of works out to be a benefit. But I think it just goes to show you, like, there's just so many opportunities, and you really don't know until you get on campus, get on phone with the coach, and start, working through some of these things with them. So, Peter, do you want to talk about video and film?
Yes. So one thing that I think that I've at least seen a lot is, athletes doing a highlight film right at the beginning of club season, and then just not sending updated film for a long time. That's what you've got to do to help build the relationship, keep coaches interested, because they're not going to be able to go to every tournament that you're at. And so if a coach, for instance, even isn't going to see you until nationals, you still should be showing them video. And we were not saying every week or every tournament, but hold on, I'm going to turn the baby monitor off real quick.
I'll talk. You don't necessarily have to, go and make a highlight video after every single tournament. I think having an updated video every couple months. I know some athletes that I've spoken with, like, they don't have a highlight video at all. Or maybe it's one from high school. Like, it is important to have that updated through the club season, because coaches do want to follow your progression. And, a highlight video is short, sweet, to the point. It's something that coaches are going to use to just basically put you into like two categories. Like, are you so far away that, it's not, I'm going to mute someone. So, are you so far off the path that, it's not going to be a fit, athletically, or, is there something there that's worth continuing this relationship? And then, a good follow-up to that is also having some of, unedited game film available, and just making sure that, it's really easy to post this stuff up on YouTube and just continuously add it, so coaches can see your progression. So, and again, highlight videos, they don't have to be fancy, guys. They really don't.
Yeah, and with the unedited game film, whether it's a full set or a full match, I think a lot of kids are very hesitant to put up a match, even if it was really good, because they hit that one ball that went 30 feet out of bounds or was almost, in the bottom of the net. Coaches are watching your full film because they know you're going to make mistakes, and it's less interest in the mistake that you made versus how you come back from that mistake. So if you're a DS and you shank a pass, it's about your body language, the communication you have, how you jump back in there, and if the next ball gets served to you again, then how you handle it. It's not about that error. If you were to pull full match film or set film on all of their players in college, it's going to be a lot of mistakes. So again, it's not about that. And that's why we talk so much about the intangibles and body language, facial expressions, communication, listening to your coaches when they talk, all of those things that coaches are watching at tournaments when they're there to see you.
The next topic that I'm going to touch on, this for me, I see this sometimes, but I know for like 122 that I worked with, this was kind of a big, theme. And it's just kind of the lack of follow-up and, building that relationship with coaches. There is one saying that Peter is always encouraging his, his athletes when they're coming off of visits or off, a phone call, making sure the students are asking, so what are the next steps? I think that's great. And, it kind of gives you an idea of what you need to continue to do. But I feel like sometimes, the athletes, they'll get off the phone with the coach, they'll be super excited, and then they kind of just sit back and maybe they're waiting for the coach. And coaches are really busy. They're recruiting, they're going through their spring seasons. We've got a job of, making sure all these athletes are getting through college and graduating. And that's really their priority. Recruiting is not their primary, job at a college. We've got to make sure that our teams are maintained first. So, go ahead.
Persistence.
Yes. So being, persistent, being consistent, continually following up, even if the relationship feels one-sided. A lot of times, coaches are going to, at some point in time, they will see all the communication that you've put through. So at some point in time, they will get caught up on it, but it's just so good, to continue that relationship and keep that follow-up. I promise you're not bugging them unless the coach says you're bugging me, but I have not heard that in all the time that I've been recruited. So have you, Peter?
No, and if you're emailing a coach and, if you send 50 emails out before a tournament and you only hear back from 4 of them, there's 2 ways you can look at that. Is one, potentially means that you're targeting the wrong audience, or B is don't be afraid to follow up after that. Hey coach, I just wanted to follow up on my email I sent before Windy City. I just wanted to reiterate that I would love the opportunity to hop on the phone with you, learn more about your program. Also, here is, attached is my new highlight video from Windy City. And that's a great follow-up because sometimes they may just miss it. Really, they're in, and sometimes we're waiting so late in the week before a tournament to send an email that they're just so bogged down that there's no way. Like one coach told me like a couple weeks ago, he was like, yeah, if you're sending me emails on Wednesday and Thursday before Friday tournament, my inbox is just nuclear. Like there's no way I'm getting through all like half of it. And so again, and that's just another thing with emailing that I don't know if you already mentioned it or we were going to, but is just, staying organized and being ahead of the game. If you've got a Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament, you should be sending emails out Sunday night, Monday morning, not Wednesday evening, Thursday, Friday, the day of. Again, stay organized and be ahead of the game, not behind it.
So, and this is kind of like it, I would say this is similar, but in maybe just a little bit different of a context, but I'll use this example. So this past weekend at the Big South qualifier, had a college coach come up to me and they were like, hey, so, this one athlete, like she's really good at sending us emails. So she sends out those, the emails to all her target list. She's doing a great job on that. What she's not good at is responding to the emails that the coaches are sending her to try to get on the phone and set up a visit. So, just making sure that you are playing an active role, in your recruiting, making sure that you are consistently following up, and it is really important to communicate to all these coaches who are responding to you. Peter, do you want to talk on that?
Yeah. For one, the volleyball community is a very small community. And, if coaches are recruiting you and you come up in conversation, those things do come up. Communication is going to be one of the single most important factors, and how well you communicate with a coach. That's going to show them about your character and that you're going to be someone reliable when you come to their program if they were to offer you. Um, I had another thing I was thinking of, and it'll come back to me. But
Um, yeah, I would say, like, as a whole, like, it can be sometimes intimidating to, to talk to a coach, or maybe you don't necessarily know, what to say or how to respond back to an email. Let us help you. We're totally here to walk you through that. And, and guys, college coaches know that it's intimidating to talk to them. Like, this is what they do. They talk to athletes, and they're used to, navigating that. So, but if we need to, kind of prepare a little bit, for those phone calls, Peter and I were happy to do that. So, we want to make sure
yeah,
you're confident. You may not be 100% confident, but we want you to be a little more confident than you are, jumping on those phone calls. But there's something that has to be done if you're, going to be going and playing at the next level.
excuse me. And so I remember my point. So it kind of puts us in a little bit of a tough and awkward position too, when coaches are saying, hey, I reached out to so and so. I've texted them, I've emailed, I've called, and I've gotten no response in a week. And then on the other end, that same athlete is telling us, oh, I just can't find schools that I like. I can't find, no one's responding to me. And then, so when you have that mentality of like, you're not finding those schools that you want, and now here's a school that's reaching out to you with high interest, like there's sort of a disconnect there in terms of probably what you're looking for and perhaps realistic expectations. And so, just even if you're not super interested, it's so easy to, or if a coach is asking for a call tomorrow, just saying, hey, coach, it's a really busy beginning of the week, but I'd love to schedule a call later in the week. And that gives you time to prep and really think about it and do a little research and, those kinds of things, talk with us about it. You just, again, kind of saying no to something before it even begins is not, isn't a great strategy.
I agree.
Bluntly.
All right. Peter, is there anything else off the top of your head that we might be missing on recruiting has stalled? Any other potential issues?
It's just, again, being patient and persistent. I mean,
I think I'll touch on one more time. Just, it this late in the game, especially right now, because this is, targeting the 22s and the 23s, it is important for you to pursue the options that you have in front of you. If you don't, then, obviously we need to go through and redo your game plan a little bit. But focusing on what you have in front of you, like Peter said, is probably going to be, more realistic to maybe the level that you are. And guys, like, I think sometimes athletes get a little disheartened or discouraged. Well, like, maybe I'm not a D1 athlete. So what? There are so many girls, women's volleyball is the fastest growing sport right now, guys. And, for you to even have, coaches and colleges coming to the door, to, who have an interest in you, like, that's amazing. Not many people can go and, say that they were an athlete in college. And I'll be honest with you. No, once you graduate, no one really cares, and even once you go off to school, nobody really cares, So I think sometimes, just putting our ego aside and, just seeing the opportunities that are really in front of you and taking a gracious approach that, this person thinks I'm good enough to play at their school. Like, that's awesome. And that is an accomplishment.
A little perspective is, it's just around 6% of high school volleyball players that go on the girls' side to play in college. So just playing in college, even if it's at a junior college to start, you are in elite company. And when Jess talks about, like, well, so what if you're not a Division I athlete? That's 1.2%. I mean, when you really think about that, that's pretty competitive, even with 330 schools or whatnot. And so to say that you're not good enough because you're not at that level really is just, it means nothing. because you're still in such elite company.
And I think, touching back on what we talked a little bit about earlier, so many of these divisions, will play each other. We have, I coach at an NAI school. We've played Division 2 schools. We've played Division 1 schools. We've played Division 3. I had a JUCO on the schedule for our spring, so, division does not necessarily equal level of play. And, I've had kids on my roster that have turned down Division 1 programs, to come play at our institution. So, that doesn't always necessarily the determining factor. I would say, the kids that have chosen my university, they chose it for, their specific reasons, whether that's, my players on the team, coaching staff, the programs that we offer at the school, our location, the size of school, that we're an HBCU. There's just so many different things. And that's what you guys have to, determine as you're walking through this recruiting process, or what are the important things to you? What matter? Volleyball is probably not going to be paying your bills one day unless you're going into a profession like ours. So the academics, in my opinion, really need to be the front runner of why you're making this decision. So, all right, we'll kind of move on here and start talking about summer camps. I know that I'm starting to get a lot of questions, on preparing for the summertime. We'll kind of go through each class, because I think each class, like, this is not like a one size fits all answer. I think every class is kind of, different things that they need to, focus on. So for the 23s, it's, once we kind of head into summer, don't freak out by my statement. It's starting to round the basis of maybe getting a little bit later in your recruiting process, but don't let that scare you. There's plenty of folks that, find their home in their senior year. But what it does mean is that we need to be really intentional about the camps that we are picking, this summertime. Going to a camp, and just kind of hoping that you're going to be found. Or if I go there, I'm going to sell the coach on myself. Like, again, they may not be recruiting your position. They may have a full roster already. So you want to focus your time and your efforts in going to a camp on, a school that you've already built a relationship with, that the coach wants you there. They want you to meet their players, maybe play alongside their other recruits. That's going to be a better use of your time. Peter, any thoughts on the 23 class, or you want to jump into the 24?
Yeah, and it's the same concept as the emailing, right? It's you taking the initiative, right? And so, like just said, like hoping that the right opportunity falls into your lap is, the same as graduating, from a large university with the same business degree as all the other business majors, and hoping that you're the one that lands the job that pays you $1 million. That job isn't going to find you. You've got to seek it out. And so recruiting is very much the same way. And so, again, the reason why we're here is to help you through that. And so, I always tell people, like, sometimes like girls are they feel one of two ways. One is completely overwhelmed, and so they're nervous to reach out. That's what we're here for. And we want to help you with that. If you're just like, I literally just don't know what to do right now. I'm completely lost. I have my target list, I've gone through it all, and I need to almost start over. Like, we're here to help you through all of those things. Even if you feel like you're really on top of it, but you're still not where you need to be, we can help you come up with more tasks. We can help you identify more schools that are going to be similar to what you are looking into already. And so again, it's just, that communication aspect, like we've talked about. If the kind of the same goes with us. So just, make sure you utilize us for any of those feelings you have.
I would say too, with the 23 is like, kind of recognizing a little bit of, like the level that you might be at. So, most of your Division 1 schools aren't really going to be utilizing summer camps to make a decision on a 23, unless they are, a new coach to a program. Maybe they have like a bigger class that they're looking to bring in, or, they've had some kids make some late decisions on things. I would say for me, right now with, my school with NAI, like, we don't tend to recruit kids until they are 22s, just because we have to make sure that they can get into our institution. So that's just kind of specific to us. But that's a lot of your D3s are going to be the same way. So, those schools will utilize their summer camps a little bit more to make a determination on their kids. So, some of this is, I would say, kind of specific to level. And what level that you are, trying to play at as well. So jumping into the 24s, because that's kind of like I would say the same split. Your purpose, you've got to know what your purpose for your camp is, heading into the summertime. So for some of your higher level athletes, those are the kids, maybe right now, like, maybe the top attacker on, like a top one team. That's going to be like, your decisions for camps are going to be a little bit different than maybe an athlete who's on a regional team, who's not, going out getting as much exposure. For your higher level athletes, this summer, you're probably going to be making a decision. Now, that's not saying that you have to. I had some, I would say, athletes who, were being considered at the Power 5, level last year, who just really were not ready to make a decision, and that's okay. But I had some that, they were really confident, and, they've done their research, they've gone through the process. And so camps are really utilized as a tool for them to work with the coaching staff, work alongside the athletes, figure out what the culture is like in the gym, see the school, and help them to make their decision. Last year they picked a handful of schools, and they went and they were like, okay, no, this is just like, I'm not ready. And they just weren't comfortable to make a decision. And you may find that, and that is totally okay. If you are maybe more of a regional level athlete, picking, some different types of programs to go to, and maybe that's to improve your volleyball skills, maybe that's to, go to some smaller schools to kind of see, what is offered, at those schools and how they run their programs. Peter, you got any thoughts on that too?
Yeah, I think just getting different experiences. And I mean, and one thing that after, we were talking earlier, Jess, that I thought of too is, when you go to these camps, it's very likely that when you get into the gym with these coaches, whether it's an elite camp or a positional camp, whatever it is, that they're going to be teaching you different techniques than you're taught in your gym. And I can tell you from, like, I was responsible for pretty much running camps at Iowa the 3 years that I was there. And when kids come into the gym and think that they know the right way to do something, or they think that their way is the only way, that's a big turnoff for coaches. And so, even if you've learned one thing your whole life, if a college coach is trying to work with you on a technique or change something, be open-minded to that, and take their advice. Try it and see how it goes. Like, it takes, like they say, 17 days to take a habit if you're working on something over and over and over and over again consistently. So things aren't going to change right away, but go to positional camps somewhere, go to an elite overnight camp somewhere, maybe a larger school, and yeah, just look for different experiences, different techniques, different coaches to try and work well with you, and ask good questions when you're at these camps too. That's your opportunity, working with coaches at this, the collegiate level, to get some great feedback. And a lot of times coaches will do like little recruiting sit downs at some of these camps too, and just talk about the process. And so don't be afraid to ask questions there, and again, use those experiences to sort of propel you forward in your process.
I feel like that's also going to be some good feedback to roll into the 25 class too. I would say, with the 25s, I've had some families that have reached out, and, for the 25 class, like, there's not really a big sense of urgency for you guys. Like, I know that there's some families that have been super stressed out, and I'm like, calm down, relax. Like, not much is happening on the recruiting, in 25s. Like, to be honest with you, coaches are just list building at that point in time. Like, and you play for a good, strong club. So, these, coaches, they're going to tag you and mark you, and they just want to see, progression, did the notes change? But, what I do think is important with this is, starting to introduce the athlete, to different colleges, maybe get on, a big campus, maybe get on a smaller campus, maybe do a local, maybe do one that's a little far away, but, try not to pick, two or three camps that are, all the same. I'm an SEC country here in Nashville. So, don't pick all, SEC schools to go do your summer camps, maybe do, one big school, one smaller school, one local, whatever that looks like. But, find some differences, so they can see the dorms, see the campuses, see the gyms, see the facilities, interact with the coaching staff, interact with the players. I think the more that, athletes can start navigating that, and, and guys, and this doesn't have to be just specific to college camps. If you're going to a tournament and, they've got, local schools out there, call up their admissions and go on a campus tour. The more that you can just start getting some things down that you like, and what it is that you might be looking for, I think that's, super helpful in the process. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, we've talked a lot about the college camps, like at the actual institutions, but you're probably also starting to see, if you haven't already, a lot of the like exact showcases for the summer and things like that, where they bring in, a handful of college coaches, and the same sort of rules apply to those, for at least in my sort of my judgment, in that, if there's going to be these 8 colleges represented at this showcase, if you're hoping to just go there and sort of be found or identified, that's a bad strategy and probably a waste of your time and money. If one of those schools you've had communication with and they've expressed to you that they'd like to see you there, that's a completely different story, because that may be one opportunity they have to see you when there may not be a lot of others. But again, kind of treat those, especially the ones that are going to cost a lot of money. Make sure, again, that you have a purpose for being there, like Jess said earlier.
So yeah, so I think that's all I have on the camps and stuff for summertime. So what we kind of wanted to finish out, and Peter, we may have to kind of rush through this a little bit, is what each class should be focusing on right now. So starting off with the 22s, this is just a really, like, I think what Peter and I want to stress, like, there are still opportunities there, so, don't be discouraged, but at the same time, like, I mean, we've got to be super intense, really getting after it. Like, it is like all hands on deck when it comes to recruiting. Like, we've just got to be really aggressive with the process, and, getting out there, making sure we're, consistent in our communication, setting up those visits, getting on those phone calls, filling out those college applications.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time left for just putting things off and procrastinating anymore. Yeah, it's got to be sort of like a daily sort of activity for you to sit down and say, I'm going to spend an hour on recruiting, and and sometimes it can feel overwhelming, but if you kind of sit down and like break out some numbers and things, it's like, okay, if I sit down and I email 10 schools and you did that every night for a week, you've reached out to 70 schools. Within 2 weeks, now you've got 140 schools. And so, again, you don't have to write everyone and with 10 different reasons why you're interested in that school. You need to get your information, your video into their hands, and then get them on the phone. But yeah, absolutely, there will be opportunities out. Last summer, we had a girl come to us in the 3rd week of May, and we found her a Division I home. I mean, things happen. But yeah, again, don't wait for something to fall into your lap, because that likely won't happen. But if you're putting the time in and you're communicating with us, and we know that you're putting that effort in, we're here to guide you every step of the way.
Um, 23s, you're kind of the next tier. And as I mentioned earlier, we're starting to kind of round the bases, so not anything that we need to like freak out over or be nervous or be scared about, but we do have to make sure that recruiting is a priority right now at this point in time. We've got to start kind of facing the reality of the level that we're at. And so maybe if we like had our hopes of being, a mid-major level D1 and those schools just aren't coming there, they're probably not at this point in time. But if you do have a handful of schools that, you know, um, that are coming to you, like start, pursuing those schools, and going through, what we talked about earlier and see if maybe that there's something that that you need to adjust, in your recruiting and in your communication, broadening our list, et cetera. Make sure that you are taking time and investing time in the options, that you have, for you. And I think, get to work. You've got to, recruiting is not this sit back process where people are going to find you. You have to put in work in recruiting if you want it to happen. So, Peter, any thoughts on that for our 23s?
Yeah, operate on what's in front of you right now, what's on the table. And if options get added, if there's nothing to say you don't end up reaching that goal that maybe you aren't suited for at this present moment. But again, be creating options for yourselves. And again, you just don't know where you really might fall in love with, if you don't have that open mind.
So following up with the 24. So, and again, just kind of similar with the camps, like summertime is probably going to look different. It's usually split for that class. So, I would say don't freak out if, June 15th rolls around and maybe folks haven't reached out to you. A couple questions that I would have is, how much effort did you put into your recruiting? If you put a lot of work into it and you're not seeing a lot of return, maybe we've got to go back to the drawing board and look at, some different levels. But some of you are going to have to be making decisions this summer. Some of you are going to have the luxury of time where you can, sit back for a little longer and, keep navigating through the process and learning some more things. So, I would say there's no right or wrong way, either on that. And both of those have their own individual stressors. So don't wish you're in an opposite boat, because recruiting is just a stressful process no matter how you're navigating it. So, but be open, make sure that we are consistently communicating right now. So even though, coaches can't really do a lot of communication back with you, it's still important to get your name out there. And like I tell teams, like there's always a strength in numbers. If everybody's getting on this and everybody's doing their recruiting stuff, like the more coaches you reach out to, maybe they come to your court and they like you, but maybe they also like your setter too. So, I think that's kind of when everyone on a team can get on board and really put a lot of effort in the recruiting, it usually helps out everybody. So anything else, Peter, that I'm missing?
Yeah, just the quicker you can eliminate the pressure of a timeline, because timeline doesn't really matter at all, but in your mind typically, and you understand that comparison is the thief of joy in this process. Just don't compare yourselves. If your friend or your teammate gets 30 emails and 15 calls on June 15th and you get 0 the whole week, perfectly okay. Like you're going to be okay. But if you start comparing yourself to their process, then that's when this is going to be a challenge, mentally, emotionally, and it will take a toll on you. And so just stay focused on your process, on your timeline. And it doesn't matter to get from point A to point B. In the recruiting process, it does not look like this. And so if you get near to that point and then they offer someone else and you're back to the drawing board, or it feels like it's backwards and up and down, it just doesn't matter as long as you end up where you're supposed to be. And that is the place where you're excited for your future. So again, take the pressures of the timeline and the comparisons and push them aside. And this process will feel a whole lot less overwhelming to you.
Peter, you kind of mentioned something, and and this may be like another Zoom for a later day too, but not putting all your eggs in one basket. I know sometimes it's exciting when, you get that questionnaire from that school and you're like, oh, they're interested in me. They sent me a questionnaire, or they sent me a camp invite. Like, and especially even too, like when June 15 rolls around for you guys and you start jumping on the phone calls, like, college coaches' jobs are supposed to be to make you feel, super excited about the process, but they're not just talking to just you. So, don't fixate. I would say every year, sometimes I have an athlete that's, gets just stuck on one school, and they might be number 2, 3, 4, 5 on that list, and then the school offers a kid above them, and that kid commits, and then it's like they go through this heartbreaking situation. And it's, you just kind of got to play the field a little bit too. They're looking at different athletes, and you've got to make sure that you're looking at different programs, as well. And it's okay to have a school and a goal, but to just really kind of put on those blinders and be like, well, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and that's the only school that I'm focusing on. Like, it can turn into a really heartbreaking, situation. So, I always like to use the example when I was growing up playing, like I really wanted to go to UCLA. My dad took me to UCLA volleyball matches when I was in 8th grade. He took all my volleyball team. But UCLA guys never came knocking on my door. So I'm a 5'9" outside hitter. But if I had been so focused on that goal, and I'm sure probably we didn't have like camp invites and that sort of stuff back in the day. Like we were still in the time of when you sent DVDs and popcorn along with it. But if I had focused just so much on that, and I would have missed out on, other opportunities that, came knocking. And so you've just got to make sure that even if a school comes on that you are really excited about, like keep it in perspective and know that they are recruiting other athletes and they are building relationships, with other folks as well. So, it's important that you do the same. And parents, I think this is when sometimes we as recruiting coordinators rely on you guys too, where just kind of, help us, make sure that everyone in the process is staying grounded. Sometimes parents can also get a little bit of a big head, and it's all about perspective. So, just keeping everybody, grounded and, focused on the big picture, and not just necessarily that one school that comes along. So, jumping in and closing out, since we've got a little bit of time here with the 25s. This one is funny to me because I feel like there are so many 25 parents out there who are just stressing out and like, I'm late in recruiting and my kid's not going to get recruited and all these other people. And I'm like, guys, like, it's just relax. Like, there's no reason why you or your daughter need to be stressing out over recruiting right now. So, I mean, Peter, what are these college coaches looking at right now in the 22 class?
And 22 or 25?
25, sorry, I misspoke.
Right, yeah.
What are they looking for in the 25 class?
Yeah, they're just looking for right now, and they're going to identify you on a court. They're looking for athleticism. They're looking at, how high you're touching around the net. They're looking at the intangibles, the character behind you, right? They know you're going to grow, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get faster, all of those things. But in how you communicate and the presence that you have on the court, along with your IQ, and, are you a high error player versus, someone who is far stronger in their ball control. I mean, they're just looking for people that they can continue to follow. And, as those athletes grow, then they're going to figure out if that kid is going to stay on their list or not. But again, that's again why we say so much of this beyond the video is what they see on the court. And it's why we talk to parents about, parent expectations at tournaments and actions, and and all those things, because, coaches they're looking at it all. They want the full package, not just the athlete.
I think, again, this is super important to just kind of keep the perspective. If Peter and I could bring in all our 25s, all our freshmen right now, and just, hey, raise your hand if you've received a questionnaire or a camp invite from a college, this past month. Every kid's going to raise their hand if they've updated their university athlete. Maybe if they don't have an updated UA, they may not be getting stuff, but every kid who's at least followed our advice and updated their UA, has probably received stuff. Does it mean something? I mean, yes and no. Are these coaches actively recruiting you? Not really. You play for a good club program. And so any kid that's, a halfway decent athlete that's playing at a good program, is going to get marked. And these coaches, they just want to see how you grow and progress. So, the athlete that you are today is going to be a lot different than the athlete that you're going to be next year, and also going into the following season, when these coaches are really going to be making their decisions. So, I would say keep perspective on it. I would say there's some athletes sometimes that I work with later who maybe when they were younger got questionnaires or camp invites from a school. They go to that camp and they never really hear from the coach after that. But the parents just get so fixated. Well, they were recruited by Ohio State, or they were recruited by so-and-so when they were a freshman. And it's not that they were recruited, they just got a camp invite. And so did, a couple thousand other kids. So,
if you have any questions differentiating whether a camp invitation, whether in the mail or an email, is directly sort of targeted to you specifically versus a mass email, we can help you identify that. And one keynote, sorry to have jumped in there, Jess, but I was just thinking about this. One keynote that you can think about is there's a huge difference between, dear, whose name's on the screen, Alice, dear Alice, we saw you compete at Windy City and, the Nashville Super Regional. And we've been, really enjoyed following your play. Here's some information for our camps. We'd love to have you there. That is completely different than the email that you can tell. It just auto-populates the person's name it's sending to. And so again, we can really help you identify those if you ever have questions. But you do want to, again, like Jess said, stay grounded. You don't want to be getting overly excited about these things or also super bummed out if you don't hear. So stay grounded, and again, just kind of take some of those things with a grain of salt and let us help you identify if that's something you should really be putting your time, energy, and effort and money into.
And in terms of things that you should be doing, I have some 25s that are super motivated, that love the recruiting process, that they think it's fun. I think they take a good mental approach, with it. They like sending out, coaches emails. They like updating video. They like sending that out. I have some athletes that I work with where that is the most scary, intimidating process. And they're like, I don't want to do it yet. And that's fine. I think you've got to kind of navigate your kid. I think, or if you're, 25 athlete listening to this, I think you've got to navigate where you're at right now. If you want to sit back this year and focus on your grades and just learning volleyball and not give recruiting a second thought this year, I'm fine with that. Peter, I don't know if you are, but I am.
Yeah, we kind of consider the 25, or the freshman year, right? We kind of consider that more of our education year, getting you, involved in the process. And then just the two main things of you can email, you can send video, you can fill out questionnaires. There's just not a whole lot more besides that you can do.
Yeah. And I think sometimes even with the kids who want to kind of, be a little bit more aggressive with the recruiting process, what I always caution is you've got to remember it's going to be one-sided. These coaches, they can't actively communicate with you. And the ones who can really just aren't recruiting your class yet. So, it's important to, because I have some athletes that are like, well, I'm emailing these coaches and I'm not finding, no one's responding back to me. So I'm not, I must not be good enough. You find out that they've emailed all Division I's and you're like, kid, they can't. So, just making sure again that we're keeping perspective on it. And, figuring out is now a good time for me to start? Do I need to wait? But I do think it's a good practice to start just getting information on colleges in general. I mean, 4 years is going to go by quickly, and hopefully the next stage is college, whether or not they're a volleyball player or not. So just kind of figuring out what that looks like, and even starting to have those conversations as a family, parents, how comfortable you are with them going a certain distance away. I know a lot of athletes, when they're super young, they have a hard time navigating what major or what area of study, so starting to kind of work together to figure out what academic interest you might have. So I think that there's things that you can start doing in terms of recruiting that aren't necessarily volleyball specific, but I think just are going to be things that you want to start navigating for college anyway. So I think that's my 2 cents. So I don't know, Peter, you got anything that you want to kind of follow up on? Anything that your mind's thinking of as we close out?
I just think regardless of what class you are, where you're at in the process right now, the normal recruiting process for, again, 90% of athletes is filled with probably more downs than ups. It's filled with a lot of getting somewhere and falling backwards and feeling like you're back at the drawing board. And so it's all about, again, just knowing that those are going to come, those sort of emotional and negative feeling spots. And, I think I relate it really well to like Hollywood actors. Like everybody knows Steve Carell, but from The Office and all the movies he's been in. But I mean, no one knew Steve Carell until he was in his mid 40s, and he was in what I don't remember what movie it was where they wax his chest and he yells Kelly Clarkson. But like he was in his mid 40s. He had never landed a big gig, but now everybody knows him. And so it's just your time will come, and you've got to stay persistent and stay grounded, and just say, like, if something does go a different way than you want it to go in this process, that you can just say, all right, we're moving on though. We're moving on. There's great options out there, and you will find them if you seek them out.
That's a good life goal anyways, right? Because life is going to throw you curveballs, and so being able to know how to navigate those and adjust as they come. I mean, that's just going to be an important life skill anyways. So I think that's all we have. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of open it up if there's anyone on the chat that wants to kind of ask questions. If there's anything that we didn't necessarily cover today, you're always more than welcome to just follow up with us, email, phone. I'm best via text message, I think, and emails. Sometimes emails if I'm traveling on a weekend. What are coaches allowed to do beginning June 15th for 24s? Can you give me a brief overview? Yeah, so June 15th for the 24s, like they can contact athletes directly. So phone calls, emails, they can start that communication back and forth. Peter, you got anything? And that's for Division I and Division II.
Yeah, and just the one thing that they still can't do is have you on visits until August 1st. Did I answer your question, Jamie? Awesome. Anything else we can kind of touch on? All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll close out this. And everyone on here, we're going to post it to YouTube. So if you want to go back and watch it, you've got that opportunity, and we will send out the link. But I guess to close out, good luck to everyone on their recruiting journeys. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. If you have any questions along the way, we are total volleyball nerds over here. So we love helping athletes through their recruiting process. And I can tell you, Peter and I, we talk just about daily over, everything, that these, kids are going through. So we're here to help. We're here to, I would say recruiting is never easy. So I don't know if we're here to make the job easy, because I don't know if easy ever is it, but we're, here to at least offer guidance through, a tough process, right? Absolutely. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.